ज़ाहिर है नूर मबदउल अनवार का, बन रहा है सारा आलम आईना बसार का.
Christian scholars who deny evolution at all stages are called creationists. To them, creation means that all animals were created in their finished forms, separately, all at the same time. This is certainly not the Quranic concept of creation. The following verse from Surah Al-Ishaqaq tells us that the human journey is continuous, moving on from one stage to another. That you shall assuredly pass on from one stage to another. Chapter 84, verse 20. This leaves us no doubt whatsoever to the fact that when the Quran speaks of creation, it speaks of progressive stages which are well provided for, categorically rejecting the idea of spontaneous generation. The term evolution originally meant change through time. However, the definition is in constant flux. Descent through common ancestry, natural selection, survival of the fittest, random effects like genetic drift, change of gene frequencies and populations, and chance have all been added since Darwin coined this concept. There are two types of evolution, macroevolution and microevolution. Microevolution is slight, short-term evolutionary changes within species. In contrast, macroevolution is the origin and diversification of higher life forms, or evolutionary change on a grand scale, encompassing, among other things, the origin of new species. E. Mayer, in his book, The Growth of Biological Thought, thinks a broader definition of evolution is needed, one that would include the multiplication of species and also the diversification within species, microevolution and macroevolution. Thus, the definition of evolution itself is evolving. According to the Darwinian principle of the survival of the fittest, for life to advance, nature has worked out an automatic method of sifting. This slow, continuous process becomes more pronounced when a species is confronted with challenges to its survival. It works in every area of animal activity. Charles Darwin, in his Origin of Species, issued a challenge which few people talk about. If it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. Darwin, Chapter 6, in the sections Modes of Transition. With this statement, Darwin produced a method whereby his theory of evolution could be tested. The logic was simple. Since evolution is a gradual process, whereby slight modifications produce advantages for survival, it cannot produce complex structures in a short period of time. It's a step-by-step process that may modify complex structures, but it cannot produce them suddenly. Now the question arises, why did life pursue an evolutionary course in one direction as if no other course was available? The only explanation offered by scientists relates to the role of natural selection. Though they fully understand the dimension and the gravity of the problem, they would have us believe that at every point of crucial decision-making, it was natural selection that made the right choice out of a countless number of available options. However blind it may be, natural selection would always go for the right choice, and only the fittest would survive in a competitive world. But this choice, on the part of natural selection, they agree, is not conscious. The Holy Quran presents a different perspective on the issue of selection. And thy Lord creates whatever he pleases, and selects whomsoever he pleases. It is not for them to choose. Glorified be Allah, and far is he above all that they associate with him. Chapter 28, verse 69. According to Islam, there is an all-embracing plan of creation. At different stages of evolution, the processes that governed and shaped life were different, but their direction remained the same, always pointing to man. Again, God informs us in the Holy Quran. What is the matter with you, that you expect not wisdom and staidness from Allah, while He has created you in different forms and ever-changing states? Chapter 71, verses 14 and 15. In this verse, both the concept of intelligent design and evolution are introduced long before Darwin coined the idea and the Discovery Institute challenged it. The purpose and philosophy of evolution is doubtlessly the creation and the promotion of our five senses. The creation of our senses, each of which in itself is a masterpiece of creative wonders, stands witness to a well-executed design of the grandest scale, where harmony rules supreme. It is no wonder that the Holy Quran sums up the entire process of evolution in just three simple terms: the creation and perfection of the faculty of hearing, seeing, and understanding. And Allah brought you forth from the wombs of your mothers, while you knew nothing, and gave you ears and eyes and hearts, that you might be grateful. Chapter 16, verse 79. Darwin did not believe in God, and had to formulate a theory removing God from any role as the creator and promoter of life. Since no designer is claimed in evolutionary theory, there is no need for any independent evidence of one. Now, most scientists agree with Darwin, but even the most fanatical scientists have to agree that there may be more to this subject than they wish to explore. For example, Richard Dawkins in his book, The Blind Watchmaker, states, "Biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose." And F. Crick, who discovered the structure of DNA, in his book What Mad Pursuit, states, "Biologists must constantly keep in mind that what they see was not designed, but rather evolved." In The Meaning of Evolution, George Gaylord Simpson repeats what is surely the official dogma of the contemporary scientific guild: man is the result of a purposeless and natural process that did not have him in mind. Others extended Darwin's theory to include the origin of life and the creation of the universe itself. Yet, some scientists are a little more open-minded. P. Johnson, in his book, Darwin on Trial, writes, "Biological evolution is just one major part of a grand naturalistic project, which seeks to explain the origin of everything from the Big Bang to the present, without allowing any role to a creator. If Darwinists are to keep the creator out of the picture, they have to provide a naturalistic explanation for the origin of life." With the help of intellectuals such as Marx and Freud, we are left with a view of humans as mere animals or machines who inhabit a universe controlled by chance, whose thoughts and actions are determined by the immutable and impersonal forces of nature and the environment. This materialistic concept of reality has slowly permeated every aspect of our culture. Another important point to be observed is that Marx's dialectical materialism was clearly influenced by Darwin's work, The Origin of Species. In fact, a deeper study reveals that dialectical materialism is merely another name for Darwin's struggle for existence, extended into human affairs. As Daniel Dennett says in his book, Darwin's Dangerous Idea, Darwin's idea had been born as an answer to questions in biology, but it threatened to expand, offering answers, welcome or not, to questions in cosmology, going in one direction back to the Big Bang, and psychology, going in the other direction to explain the human mind and spirit. Darwin's idea thus also threatened to spread all the way up, dissolving the illusion of our own authorship, our own divine spark of creativity and spark of understanding. Darwin's dangerous idea has seeped into Western life in a number of subtle ways, slowly compromising the basis of our legal and political rights. If we are nothing more than the sum of chance, impersonal law, and environment, then we are not free and responsible individuals, endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Because we are not free, we are not responsible. So paradoxically, we can do whatever we want. We are no longer accountable. The Holy Quran offers a different perspective. He created the heavens and the earth with an eternal purpose, and He gave you shape and made your shapes beautiful, and to Him is the ultimate return. Chapter 64, verse 4. Evolutionists do differ on the details of the process. If rival models of evolution cannot even in principle explain complexity, then Dawkins' blind watchmaker theory deserves to be called the theory of evolution. This is exactly what his protege, Helena Cronin, did call it in her book, The Ant and the Peacock, where she referred to Dawkins' model simply as modern Darwinism. Harvard professor Stephen Jay Gould, in his angry review of Cronin's book, Gould denied that most evolutionary biologists accept the gene selection model as presented by Dawkins and declared that genes cannot possibly be the exclusive unit of selection. Gould asserted forcefully that most important bodily characteristics are emergent properties of organisms which are not produced in any direct way by individual genes or even combinations of genes. Instead, these properties are products of such complex interactions among genes that they cannot even in principle be adequately known or predicted at the genetic level. Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad agrees. Again, it should be emphasized here that the phenomenon of natural selection under changing environments does not possess any instrument of affecting internal cellular changes to suit the external requirements. The chromosomes and the character-bearing genes lie far beyond the reach of chaotic external changes. The natural laws which govern them are insulated from the whims of cold and heat, of dryness and humidity. They are two absolutely unrelated phenomena. Hence, in a game of chance, as indeed it is a game of chance, it's highly implausible for it to always take the stride in the right direction as needed by the dictates of evolutionary requirements at that point in time. It is unfortunate, however, that most scientists shut their eyes to the inevitability of the hand of a conscious wise selector, who will always take the right decisions at the right moment and will not leave them to the throw of a dice. How can it be possible for evolution to continuously march forward in the direction of man, while at each moment the chances of taking the wrong steps backward are overwhelmingly large? At each step forward, evolution driven by chance should have slipped 100,000 steps backwards. But for life with no prefixed direction, as some naturalists believe, the concept of a step forward simply does not arise. Forward in which direction and to what end are the questions which can never be answered in relation to chance being its creator. Every step it took could be in any direction. Hence, even turning the journey of life backwards could not resolve the problem. Man, not being the ultimate goal of evolution, life would lose its bearing in the wilderness of chaos, squandering each quality it had gained by chance to the stormy, aimless winds of annihilation. We've seen Dawkins and Gould disagree with each other over their respective theories of evolution. Dawkins says that evolution must be slow and gradual
for the blind watchmaker to get the design done right. Gould states that according to the fossil evidence, evolution is not a slow and gradual process, but happens in geological instantaneous bursts.
Darwin recognized that the fossil record did not contain fossils of these intermediate forms of life. The number of transitional varieties which have formerly existed on the Earth must be truly enormous. However, why then is not every geological formation and every stratum full of such intermediate links? Geology assuredly does not reveal any such finely graduated organic chain, and this perhaps is the most obvious and gravest objection which can be urged against my theory. Charles Darwin and his Origin of Species. According to paleontologists, those scientists who study bones, almost all of the major living animal categories appear in the fossil record during the Cambrian period about 550 million years ago. This takes place within a 5 to 10 million year period which has been called the Cambrian explosion. It is unlikely that any theory of evolution can account for the lack of transitional forms because it must create too many complex life forms too quickly. Before the Cambrian period, very few fossils have anything to do with modern animal categories, as are found in the fossil record. The sudden appearance of animal life in the Cambrian period has now earned titles such as the Big Bang of Animal Evolution, according to Scientific America, Evolution's Big Bang, according to Science Magazine, and the Biological Big Bang, according to Science News. The Cambrian explosion is by no means the only explosion in the fossil record. Plant biologists have called the origin of plants an explosion, saying the spreading of land plant species is the terrestrial equivalent of the much debated Cambrian explosion of marine plants. Vertebrate paleontologists believe there was a mammal explosion because of the few transitional forms between major mammal groups. Others have called the origin of our modern man a genetic revolution, where no ape species is obviously transitional, leading one commentator to call it, like others call the Cambrian explosion, a Big Bang theory of human evolution.
The pattern of the rapid appearance of diverse life forms without transition remains an important pattern in the fossil record. Now, Gould, Eldridge, and others have formed a different response to this difficulty. They call it punctuated equilibrium, which means rapid evolution. What they find is long periods of no evolution whatsoever, interrupted by short periods of very rapid evolution. Thus, punctuated equilibrium, or rapid evolution, proves that Darwin was mistaken. Ernest Mayr in 2001 wrote in his book, What Evolution Is, that new life forms usually appear suddenly in the fossil record, not connected to their ancestors through any series of intermediates. The Holy Quran comments on this issue.
All praise belongs to Allah, the originator of the heavens and the earth, who employs the angels as messengers, having wings 2, 3, and 4. He adds to his creation whatever he pleases, for Allah has power over all things. Bats are an example. There are no fossil transitional forms leading to bats, and they basically appear in the fossil record as modern bats. Turtles are another example. They pop out of the fossil record in the late Triassic period without any predecessors or transitional forms. The earliest reported jawless fish in the fossil record are found near the early middle of the Cambrian explosion with absolutely nothing resembling a fossil ancestor. The fact that such a complex organism as fish seemed to pop up at the very beginning of the animal fossil record is nothing short of a huge challenge to a naturalistic evolutionary account. Various evolutionists have conceded that the origin of fishes is a major mystery as far as their naturalistic evolution is concerned. The alleged amphibian to reptile transition is pretty much non-existent in the fossil record, according to vertebrate paleontologist Robert Carroll. The earliest known reptiles are immediately recognized as members of this group because of similarities of their skeleton to those of primitive living lizards. The earliest reptiles are sufficiently distinct from all other previous amphibians that their specific ancestry has not been established. Amphibians lay their eggs in water, and the larvae undergo a complex metamorphosis before reaching the adult stage. Reptiles lay a hard shell-cased egg, and the young are perfect replicas of the adults. No explanation exists for how an amphibian could have developed a reptilian mode of reproduction. Not only do the differences between reptiles and amphibians dictate that this transition faces immense obstacles, but it seems that this is clearly a necessary but missing link in Darwin's theory. The reptile-mammal transition is also claimed to be a complete fossil transition, so complete and convincing that Stephen Jay Gould even termed it the crown jewel of the fossil record. Millions of years' worth of alleged evolution and morphological change are nothing less than non-existent. Is there any reason to believe that mammals are connected through ancestry to reptiles? Changing it through step-by-step Darwinian mutations is very hard to imagine. You've probably never heard of this, but it just so happens that evolutionarily speaking, nobody has any idea where the dinosaurs came from. The major dinosaur groups appear in the late Triassic period without any recognizable ancestors. Evolution paleontologist Larry Martin, a challenger of the dinosaur to birds theory, was quoted as saying that such comparisons are riddled with characteristics based on mistaken anatomy, and such theories of dinosaur origins of birds are a good example of garbage in and garbage out. Despite all the talk of dinosaur fossils leading up to birds, there is actually a huge gap of 40 to 50 million years in the fossil record between the time of the supposed bird-like dinosaur to the appearance of the first true birds. At about 70 to 80 million years ago, almost all modern bird groups appear without any direct recognizable evolutionary predecessor. Apart from the whale, the evolutionary fossil changes leading to almost all other mammal groups are generally not even claimed to exist. Similar to the Cambrian explosion, paleontologists call the appearance of mammals in the fossil record something like a mammal explosion. Major and minor groups appear without any recognizable predecessors. Plants have what paleontologists call a very poor fossil record. Or do they? Soft algae fossils are thought to be found as far back as 600 million years ago, so it is clearly possible to find plants if they are there. However, all major groups of plants appear in the fossil record without recognizable transitional forms between one and another. By denying the existence of a creator who has to be a being with a conscious mind and all the power to implement his decisions, the scientists try to replace him with a formless idea. This idea of evolution finds no support in either the fossil evidence or biological evidence. Islam regards the idea of life with no creator as idolatry, and answers these scientists in the following verse. Have they feet wherewith they walk, or have they hands wherewith they hold? Or have they eyes wherewith they see? Or have they ears wherewith they hear? Say, call upon the partners you associate with God, then contrive ye all against me, and give me no time. Chapter 7, verse 196.
Formless ideas can have as much time as they may, but God with his creative faculties can create in practically no time, which is exactly what the fossil record has shown us.
For decades, scientists have been collecting evidence that contradicts both Darwin's theory and the grand materialistic gloss that usually accompanies it. Many physicists and cosmologists now recognize that the universe had a beginning and that many physical laws look suspiciously fine-tuned for the existence of intelligent life. In addition, biochemists and biologists have discovered a microscopic world of mesmerizing complexity, belaying the simple blobs of protoplasm that Darwin imagined. Moreover, we now know that the DNA that specifies all life is like an information-rich language. Inside every human cell sits a tiny encoded DNA, 5/1000th of a millimeter in diameter, which, if unfolded, would be 1 meter long. Even Bill Gates has observed. DNA is like a computer program, but far more advanced than any software we've ever created. This new evidence requires a new explanation. Perhaps one of the most serious challenges to evolutionary theory comes from the arena of information theory. Scientists are beginning to see life as an information-based process in which the DNA contained within each cell is based on a genetic language. In turn, this language contains huge amounts of information, more than would be contained in a library of 1,000 volumes. This amount of information is not a total for the entire organism. There is this much information in each cell. Therefore, any explanation of life must explain the origin of this information. Information does not just happen by chance or random processes, and it could not conceivably arise from purely random physical interactions. The fine-tuned universe is a concept that claims evidence for a divine cosmic plan. As the argument goes, the chance that any initially random set of constants would correspond to the set of values that we find in our universe is very small, and the universe is exceedingly unlikely to be the result of mindless chance. Rather, an intelligent, purposeful creator must have arranged the constants to support life. Again, the concept of the fine-tuned universe was presented in the Holy Quran 1400 years ago. Blessed is he in whose hand is the kingdom, and he has the power over all things. It is he who has created death and life, that he may try you, which of you is best in deeds, and he is mighty, the most forgiving. The same who created 7 heavens in stages. No incongruity can you see in the creation of the gracious God. Then look again. Do you see any flaw? Aye. Look again and yet again. Your sight will only return to you, tired and fatigued. The Holy Quran, chapter 67, verses 2 through 5. If it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed, which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. Charles Darwin, From the Origin of Species. Mr. Darwin. Meet Michael Bay, biochemical researcher and professor at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. Michael Bay claims to have shown exactly what Darwin claimed would destroy the theory of evolution, through a concept he calls irreducible complexity. In simple terms, this idea applies to any system of interacting parts in which the removal of one part destroys the function of the entire system. An irreducibly complex system, then, requires each and every component to be in place before it will function.
As an example of irreducible complexity, Bay presents the humble mousetrap. It contains 5 independent parts, which allows it to catch mice: the base, the hammer, the spring, the catch, and the holding bar. Each part is absolutely essential for the function of the mousetrap. They all must be there at the same time for the mousetrap to work.
Applying this to biological structures, although the tiniest bacterial cells are incredibly small, each is in effect a veritable micro-miniaturized factory containing thousands of exquisitely designed pieces of intricate molecular machinery made up altogether of 100,000 million atoms, far more complicated than any machine built by man, and absolutely without parallel in the non-living world. In a word, the cell is complicated, very complicated. The complicated biological structures in a cell exhibit the exact same irreducible complexity that we saw in the simple mousetrap. In other words, they are all or nothing. Either everything is there and it works, or something is missing and it doesn't work. Remember, Darwin's mechanism is one of gradual mutations leading to improved fitness and survival. A less than complete system of this nature simply will not function, and it certainly won't help the organism to survive. Indeed, having a half-formed and hence non-functional system would actually hinder survival and would be selected against. The Holy Quran teaches us, He is the originator of the heavens and the earth. When He decrees a thing, He only says to it, be, and it is. Chapter 2, verse 118.
Origin of life is best described as the physical and chemical processes that brought into existence the first self-replicating molecules. Origin of life theories cannot rely on natural selection to increase complexity, and they must instead create life using only the laws of chemistry and physics.
Regarding the origin of life, the Holy Quran states, Who has created 7 heavens in stages? No incongruity can you see in the creation of the gracious God. Then look again. Do you see any flaw? Aye, look again, and yet again. Your sight will only return to you tired and fatigued, having seen no incongruity. The Holy Quran, chapter 67, verses 4 and 5. This vision of creation leaves no room for an ungoverned and unguided course of evolution. In fact, the entire scheme of things, both biotic and prebiotic, are sketched by the Holy Quran as a coherent plan of order completely devoid of chaos. Dawkins almost admits this. All appearances to the contrary, the only watchmaker in nature is the blind forces of physics, albeit deployed in a very special way. From Richard Dawkins in his book, The Blind Watchmaker.
There are so many problems with the purely natural explanation for the chemical origin of life on Earth that many scientists have abandoned all hopes of ever proving that life had a natural origin on this planet.
Scientific American editor John Horgan wrote, If I were a creationist, I would cease attacking the theory of evolution and focus instead on the origin of life. This is by far the weakest strut of the chassis of modern biology.
Professor Panaparuma writes in his book Evolution from Space, We now have strong evidence of life on Earth 3.8 billion years ago. This brings the theory of the origin of life on Earth into a very narrow range. We are now thinking in geochemical terms of instant life.
Remember the end of verse 196 of chapter 7, which states, Then contrive ye all against me, and give me no time.
Sometimes scientists try to lead us to believe that they have understood the origins of life. For example, the National Academy of Sciences writes, The question is no longer whether life could have originated through chemical processes. The question has now become, which of the many pathways could have been followed to produce the first cell? A more accurate statement would be to admit that there is currently no known chemical pathway to explain the many steps in the origin of life, including how an RNA world turned into a DNA protein world. Somewhere along the line it is said that RNA turned into DNA, which is the main genetic molecule of all life today. How did this happen? In reality, no one has a clue. This complicated scenario is well presented by biologist John Maynard Smith.
The origin of the DNA code is perhaps the most perplexing problem in evolutionary biology. The existing translational machinery is at the same time so complex, so universal, and so essential that it is hard to see how it could have come into existence or how life could have existed without it. It's as though everything must happen at once, the entire system must come into being as one unit, or it is worthless. There may well be ways out of this dilemma, but I don't see them at the moment. The noted scientist who discovered the structure of DNA, Francis Crick, said, "The origin of life appears to be almost a miracle. So many are the conditions which would have had to be satisfied to get it going." Again, we read in the Holy Quran, "Do they not reflect within themselves that Allah has not created the heavens and the earth and all that is in between the two, but in accordance with the requirements of wisdom and for a fixed term? But many among men believe not in the meeting with their Lord." Chapter 30, verse 9.
The Darwinian mechanism is incapable of generating the specified complexity found in biological organisms. It follows that chance and necessity are insufficient for the natural sciences, and that the natural sciences need to leave room for a creator. The Holy Quran makes a wide range of observations covering the entire span of the creative process, pertaining to both the evolution of life and the preparatory stages preceding it. The word Rabb in Arabic, translated as Lord in English, invariably means someone who evolved something from a lower to a higher stage. The verses in the Quran pertaining to the origin of life are as
Verse 31. "He created him, Adam, out of dust." Chapter 3, verse 60. "And the jinn we created before from blasts of fire." Chapter 55, verse 16. "He created you from clay, humid or moist earth." Chapter 6, verse 3. "He created man from dry wringing clay-like pieces of pottery." Chapter 55, verse 15. "And surely we created man of dry wringing clay, of black mud wrought into shape." Chapter 15, verse 27. During the first 3.5 billion years of the earth, the atmosphere remained oxygen-free. There was no protective ozone layer in the stratosphere either. The bombardment of this intense cosmic energy became largely instrumental in the creation of prebiotic organisms which helped the transfer of material from inorganic to organic. Interestingly, jinn, or bacteria, are described as having been born out of blasts of fire, fire from the cosmos. The prime candidates for the application of these verses seem to be such minute organisms as drew the energy for their existence directly from hot blazes of lightning and cosmic radiation. Dickerson inadvertently agrees with the Quranic view when he observes that most ancient organisms would have lived on the energy of lightning and ultraviolet radiation.
The relevant point is that all forms of the most ancient bacteria draw their energy directly from heat. This is a tribute of no small magnitude to the declaration made in the Holy Quran over 1400 years ago.
The Holy Quran envisions life as having been advanced step by step from dust, from water, from clay, and also from fermenting blackish mud, which subsequently turned into dry ringing clay. No man of the era, when the Quran was revealed, could even remotely relate the creation of man to dry ringing clay made out of stagnant mud.
Sidney W. Fox showed how clay subjected to a cycle of wetting and drying can link the molecules of the amino acid known as glycine. This cycle transfers energy from the environment to the organic molecule.
The Quran is evidently on the side of those who support a wet beginning with an intermediary stage of dryness where concentrated primordial soup was molded from blackish mud into plates like dry ringing clay, such as broken pieces of earthenware. It is worthy to note here that these verses clearly state that the material used for the making of pottery-like plates was decayed organic matter, stagnant blackish mud.
The scientists believe that upon further drying, the clay must have crystallized asymmetrically, thus becoming laminated into extremely thin layers, one set upon the other, to form plates resembling pieces of broken pottery. Graham Cairns Smith hypothesized that clay crystals could act as a template, which would allow for the continued creation and replication of organic material. Hypothetically, this scenario could create a wide variety of organic molecules, which is the first step in the creation of life. Harold Klein, from Santa Clara University, expresses his doubts about how life could have created itself in the following words: "It is almost impossible to imagine how it could have happened."
Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad interjects, "We only object to the word almost. Instead, he should have clearly confessed that it was absolutely impossible without the creative power of God."
किस कदर ज़ाहिर